Captain Elias adjusted the straps of his suit as the small shuttle landed on the jagged terrain of Rixus 7. The planet's atmosphere was thick with storms, and the sky glowed an unnatural violet. Lightning forked in the distance, and the wind blew sand and dust across the rocky surface. Elias squinted, scanning the horizon, his hand resting on the hilt of his energy blade. Though he was a human, alone on this harsh world, he carried the pride of his species quietly but firmly. Rixus 7 was unwelcoming. Tall spires of alien stone rose like jagged teeth from the cracked earth. Strange, pulsating lights shone from cracks in the cliffs, casting an eerie glow across the planet. This was the edge of the known universe, a place humans rarely dared to explore. And yet here he was, sent to observe, to learn, and to survive. Elias's mission was simple: gather intelligence on the alien forces rumored to control this planet. But the reports had not prepared him for the reality. The air hummed with energy, and strange creatures scuttled in the shadows. The wind carried a metallic tang sharp in his nose. Every step forward was a challenge, but Elias moved with careful determination, his boots crunching against the coarse sand. It was then he first saw her, Sira, a warrior unlike any Elias had ever faced, even in his dreams. She stood atop a ridge, arms crossed, observing him. Her armor glinted in the stormlight, sleek and black, with patterns that pulsed faintly with energy. Her eyes were sharp, bright, and full of confidence, a predator assessing prey. She tilted her head, and a low laugh drifted across the wind. "You are weak," she said, her voice carrying easily despite the howling wind. "How do you expect to survive here?" Elias didn't flinch. The words stung, but they also fueled him. He had faced doubt before, from his comrades, from other humans, even from himself. But this was different. Here on a distant world, he was alone against an alien warrior of incredible power. He knew his strength alone would not win the day. But he also knew something they did not. Humans had a gift for courage that refused to bend under fear. "I survive by moving forward," he said calmly, his voice firm despite the storm. "Not by giving up." Zira laughed again, louder this time. It was a sound filled with disbelief and amusement. "Forward?" She sneered. "You are barely more than a child stumbling in the sand. You think courage will help you here?" Elias took a slow step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. The wind whipped around him, tugging at his cloak. His hand rested lightly on the artifact he carried, a small, strange device he had discovered in a derelict ship near the planet's orbit. No alien had seen its power yet, but Elias knew it could turn the tide if used wisely. For now, though, it was hidden beneath his coat. A secret advantage. Sira's laugh faded slightly as she studied him more closely. She had faced many creatures in her life. Warriors from distant worlds, beasts of immense size. But something about this human caught her attention. He was small, fragile even, yet he did not cower. He did not flee. Instead, he held himself with a quiet confidence that was unusual among his kind. "You will not last long," she said, her tone sharp now. "The storms will tear you apart. The ground itself conspires against you. I would step aside for your own sake, but I enjoy watching a human fail." Elias raised his chin. "Then I hope you enjoy being surprised." For a moment, the storm seemed to pause, as if the planet itself held its breath. Then the wind gusted violently, whipping around them both. Zira's hair streamed behind her like black lightning, and her armor shimmered as she readied herself. She moved with fluid grace, a predator confident in its strength. Elias watched her carefully, noting every movement. He did not intend to fight today, not yet. Today he intended to survive, to observe, and to understand. The terrain around them was treacherous. Sharp rocks jutted from the sand like teeth, and hidden crevices threatened to swallow a careless step. Elias moved carefully, testing the ground before committing his weight. Every sense was alert, from the smallest vibration under his boots to the distant rumble of the approaching storm. He knew that brute strength alone would not carry him through this day. Sira stepped down from the ridge, moving closer. Her movements were silent despite the chaos around them. She stopped a few meters from Elias, crossing her arms again. Her eyes glinted with amusement and challenge. "Look at you," she said softly, almost mockingly. "A human standing here like you own this place. You are fragile, weak, and untrained, and yet you do not run." Elias met her gaze steadily. "I do not run because running solves nothing. You may be stronger, but strength is not the only measure of a being." Sira tilted her head, intrigued despite herself. She had heard of humans before. small, fragile creatures from a distant star. But they were often dismissed as unremarkable. Most aliens she knew considered them weak and expendable. Yet this one stood before her, unafraid, unshaken by the storm or her presence. "Curious," she muttered. "Very curious. Perhaps you are different from the others. Perhaps—" She paused, and a smile curved her lips. "Perhaps you amuse me." Elias allowed a small smile in return. He did not know if it was enough to change her mind, but it gave him confidence. Sometimes even a small gesture could be a declaration of strength. Humans had survived not just because of power, but because of will, ingenuity, and spirit. The storm grew louder, thunder crashing across the skies. Lightning struck distant cliffs, sending showers of sparks into the air. The wind tore at their cloaks, yet Elias stood firm. He could feel the artifact beneath his coat, humming faintly with energy. Soon he would need its power, but now was not the time. First, he would survive Zira's gaze, her words, and her tests. "You will not last long here," Zira said again, her voice sharper this time. "The planet will break you before I even touch you." Elias nodded slowly. "Then I will bend, not break. I will survive this storm, and I will learn. And perhaps when the time comes, I will teach you something about humans that you have never known." Zira laughed once more, though there was a flicker of something new in her eyes, interest, curiosity, maybe even respect. She stepped back, watching him carefully. "Very well, human. Let us see if your courage is as strong as your words. Survive the storm, and perhaps you may live to face me again." With that, she turned and disappeared into the swirling sand and lightning, leaving Elias alone. He breathed in deeply, feeling the electricity in the air, and adjusted his cloak. Today he survived. Today he learned. And tomorrow he would face the storm and her again. The wind howled around him, carrying the scent of ozone and distant metal. Elias looked toward the horizon, where lightning streaked across the sky. Somewhere out there, amid the alien ruins and jagged cliffs, his future awaited. He knew the road would be dangerous, perhaps deadly. But he also knew that humans had a way of surviving against impossible odds. And Captain Elias was determined to prove that even on a world that seemed designed to crush him, even under the gaze of a warrior who laughed at his weakness, humans could endure. Humans could adapt. Humans could rise. For now, the storm raged around him, but Elias did not run. He did not tremble. He simply waited, ready for the next challenge, ready for the next encounter, ready to show that courage, intelligence, and spirit could be more powerful than brute strength alone. And somewhere in the storm, Zira paused, sensing that the human before her was unlike any she had ever met. Perhaps this small, fragile creature from a distant star was more than he seemed. Perhaps in the heart of the storm, the human would summon something she had never imagined. The wind screamed, the lightning danced, and the story of human courage on Rixus 7 had only just begun. The wind never ceased on Rixus 7. Even as night fell, lightning flashed across the jagged cliffs, illuminating the alien city in harsh, cold light. Captain Elias moved cautiously through the rough terrain, his cloak wrapped tightly around him. Every step was measured, each movement deliberate. He had learned quickly that this planet was unkind to the careless. Sharp rocks, hidden pits, and sudden gusts of wind threatened to throw him off balance at every turn. But Elias's attention was not solely on the terrain. He knew she was watching. Zira, the alien warrior who had laughed at him hours ago from her perch on the ridge. She was a predator, confident in her strength and skill. And she had made it clear. Humans were weak, fragile, and inferior. As he approached the edge of a jagged plateau, a shadow detached itself from the storm. Zira landed lightly before him, her armor glinting even in the dim light of the storm. She was taller than him, imposing, yet her presence carried elegance. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, examined him with amusement. "Still standing," she said, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. "I thought you would have run by now, or broken under the wind and cold." "I am still here," Elias replied evenly, "and I will remain until I complete my mission." Zira's lips curved into a small smile. "Bold words. Brave words. But words alone cannot save you here." She circled him slowly, her movements precise like a dancer and a predator all at once. "Do you even understand what you are facing, human? The storm is nothing compared to what I can do." Elias did not flinch. Instead, he studied her carefully. Every step she took, every gesture was deliberate. Zira had trained for years to fight, to dominate, to command. Elias had not. But he had something else. A mind that adapted quickly, instincts honed by survival, and the courage to face impossible odds. "Perhaps," he said calmly, "you will show me. Then I will learn." Her laughter rang out again, louder this time, carried by the wind. "Learn? You will learn only defeat. You humans have nothing but stubbornness and hope, and both will fail you here." Elias's hand brushed against the artifact hidden beneath his coat. He felt its faint hum, the energy within waiting to be called. Not yet. Not until he fully understood his opponent and the battlefield. Patience was his ally, and he had learned that patience could be as deadly as a blade. Zyra stopped circling him and lowered her stance, placing her hands on her hips. "Tell me, human," she said, her tone taunting. "What do you expect to accomplish here? Are you trying to survive the storm, or are you hoping to impress me?" Elias met her gaze without hesitation. "Neither. I am here to do what humans always do, find a way to succeed no matter the odds." She laughed again, a sound both musical and mocking. "And yet you look so fragile. One wrong step, one miscalculation, and the storm itself will consume you." "How?" "Amusing." The wind tore at his cloak and pushed against him, but Elias planted his feet firmly. He could feel the raw energy of the storm vibrating through the ground. He knew he had to keep his focus. Every human instinct told him that survival depended on awareness, timing, and the ability to act under pressure. "You speak boldly," Zyra said, stepping closer. Her armor hummed softly with energy, and the lights along the edges glowed brighter as if feeding on her confidence. "But will your courage stand when tested?" "Words are cheap, human. Let us see your actions." Elias nodded slowly. He had expected this moment. She wanted him to fail, wanted to see the human species humbled, but he had no intention of giving her that satisfaction. Survival required more than strength. It required wit, planning, and control over fear. Zyra's eyes glinted. She raised her hand, and the ground beneath them rumbled faintly. Rocks shifted, sand fell from cliffs, and small bursts of electrical energy sparked across the ground. "Step carefully," she said, her smile sharp. "The storm is my ally, and it will test you before I even strike." Elias watched, adjusting his stance. The storm was unpredictable, but he had observed its patterns for hours. He moved deliberately, testing each step, feeling the vibrations through the rocky ground. He had learned to read the land, to sense danger before it arrived. His training as a human soldier combined with quick thinking gave him an edge even in the face of overwhelming odds. Zyra tilted her head, intrigued despite herself. Most beings she encountered panicked immediately, overwhelmed by the storm and her presence. Elias did not. He adapted, calculated, and moved forward with purpose. "You are different," she murmured, almost to herself. "Stronger in spirit than I expected. But your body will betray you soon enough." Elias did not respond. He let her underestimate him. It was part of the strategy. In battle, underestimation was an advantage. Zyra believed she had already won, and that confidence would be her weakness. The alien city rose behind them, spires of black stone and glowing light. Its inhabitants could see the confrontation, but they held their distance. They had rarely witnessed a human in person, and few were still standing tall in the face of their strongest warrior. Whispers of curiosity and disbelief spread among the aliens as they watched the unlikely scene unfold. Zyra's patience began to show cracks. Her amusement was tinged with frustration. "You move carefully," she said, "but you hesitate. You are slow, weak, and unsure. The storm will punish hesitation." "You are nothing compared to me." Elias stepped closer, keeping his voice calm. "Strength is not the only measure of a being. You may overpower me now, but that does not determine the end." Her laugh was sharp and cutting, echoing across the cliffs. "Do not speak of ends, human. Your end will come soon, and it will be swift. The storm, the terrain, and I together, we will see your limits." Elias paused, feeling the tension of the storm around him. The wind tugged at his cloak, lightning flashed closer, and sand stung his skin, and yet he did not falter. He had survived worse conditions before. He had faced impossible odds in training simulations and in combat, and he had always adapted. "What you do not understand," Elias said, his eyes glinting with determination, "is that humans have a way of surviving that goes beyond strength. We endure, we think, we find solutions where others see only obstacles." Zyra's eyes narrowed. She had heard similar words before from defeated foes, but there was something different about this human. She could not yet understand it. But she sensed it, a spark of potential, of resourcefulness, of courage that refused to break under pressure. The storm around them intensified, as if testing Elias in response to his words. Lightning struck closer, thunder cracked across the sky, and the wind tore at the cliffs. Rocks slid beneath their feet and the ground trembled with energy. Zyra raised her hand slightly, letting the storm dance around her. "Survive this," she said, her tone a mixture of challenge and warning. "If you do, I may begin to respect you." Elias watched the storm carefully, analyzing its patterns. He moved with purpose, each step deliberate, using the wind and debris to his advantage. He dodged falling rocks and shifting sand, keeping his balance and his focus. Every move demonstrated skill, patience, and intelligence. The alien crowd began to murmur among themselves. Humans were not expected to endure such conditions, and yet this one pressed forward with calm determination. Even Zira's amusement began to waver into curiosity. "You continue to surprise me," she admitted grudgingly. "Most would have fallen, given in, or fled long before now. You remain. You endure. And for that I am intrigued." Elias allowed a faint smile. "I am not here to impress," he said. "I am here to survive and to learn. That is what humans do. We adapt and we endure, even when the odds are against us." Zira studied him silently for a long moment, the storm raging around them like a living thing. She could feel the determination in him, the unyielding will, and for the first time, she wondered if her laughter had been premature. "Very well," she finally said, her tone sharp but with a trace of respect. "Survive this storm, human. Show me your courage. Show me your skill. Perhaps then I will see more in you than mere weakness." Elias nodded, his heart steady despite the storm. He had survived this long, and he would survive longer. The storm was only the first test, and he intended to endure. In the distance, lightning flashed again, illuminating the alien city and the harsh cliffs. The night was alive with energy, but Elias moved forward step by step, confident in his ability to endure. The encounter was far from over, but he knew one thing. Humans had a strength that no storm, no alien, and no challenge could fully contain. And somewhere above, Zira watched, silently acknowledging that this human was unlike any she had faced before. The storm over Rixus 7 had grown fiercer. Lightning cracked across the sky, striking jagged cliffs and sending showers of sand and rock flying through the air. The wind roared like a living beast, ripping at everything in its path. Captain Elias crouched behind a large shard of stone, the storm lashing at his face and body. But his eyes were fixed on Zira. She moved like a shadow, her black armor reflecting the flashes of lightning. Each step she took was confident, precise, and full of controlled energy. Zira had not expected a human to survive the storm this long. Most would have been battered to the ground or blown off the cliffs. Yet Elias remained standing, calm and alert. "You are still here," she said, her voice cutting through the wind. "How? The storm will tear you apart. You should have fallen already." Elias stood, adjusting the straps of his cloak. "I told you," he said calmly. "Humans endure. We adapt and we survive." Zyra laughed sharply. "Endure, adapt? You are nothing but a fragile creature. Courage does not stop the storm. Skill does not stop the storm. You will break before I even touch you." Elias did not respond. He had learned that words alone were useless against a warrior like her. Action was what mattered. He reached inside his coat, fingers brushing against the small artifact he had retrieved from the abandoned ship orbiting Rixus 7. Its surface was smooth, metallic, and faintly warm to the touch. The hum of its energy was subtle but steady, almost as if it were alive. The artifact had been a mystery at first. Elias did not fully understand its power, but he knew it could manipulate energy in ways that no alien technology on Rixus 7 could match. And now, with Zira before him testing him, the time to use it was near. Zira stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "Do not think you can surprise me, human. You are weak. You cannot command the elements, and you cannot control this storm." Elias took a deep breath, feeling the electricity in the air. The storm was not just weather, it was energy, wild and untamed. Most would see chaos. He saw potential. Slowly, he lifted the artifact from his coat. It glowed softly at first, then brighter as he focused his mind. Zira's laugh faltered. "What is that?" she demanded, stepping back slightly. The storm whipped around her, and she felt the artifact's subtle energy brushing against her senses. Elias raised the device, holding it out in front of him. "It is a tool," he said quietly, But its true power comes from control. And control comes from courage and focus, something humans have, even when the odds are impossible. Lightning struck closer, and the storm seemed to respond to his words. The clouds swirled above him in response to his presence, the wind bending and twisting around the artifact's glow. Small arcs of energy danced across the ground, connecting rocks and sand like tiny lightning strikes. Elias felt the power building within him and the device. Sira's eyes widened. She had faced storms before, controlled energy, and wielded power beyond what most beings could imagine. But this was different. This human, this small, fragile creature was commanding the storm itself, bending it to his will. You cannot do this," she said, stepping back further. "This is impossible for a human." Elias did not answer. He focused all his energy on the artifact, on the storm, on the moment. The wind screamed louder, and the lightning arced across the sky in bright, jagged streaks. Sand and debris lifted into the air, spinning around him in a vortex of energy. The storm had become an extension of his will, controlled not by brute force but by determination, focus, and intelligence. The alien crowd watching from the city below gasped in unison. None had ever seen a human achieve such a feat. The whispers spread quickly. This human was more than he appeared. He was clever, resourceful, and against all expectations, powerful in a way the aliens had not anticipated. Sira's expression shifted from amusement to disbelief. She moved closer, trying to disrupt his concentration. But the storm swirled around him as a protective shield. Lightning arced from the clouds above, but it did not strike him. Instead, it followed his intent, striking the jagged cliffs and sending showers of sparks into the air. You command the storm!" Zira shouted, astonished. "No human has ever done this." Elias's voice remained calm. "Humans survive because we do not give up. We adapt, we learn, and when the moment comes, we act." The wind screamed around them both. Zira tried to use her strength, launching herself toward him, but the storm shifted in response to Elias's focus. Rocks and debris spun around her, forcing her to dodge and retreat. The storm had become more than a natural force. It was a weapon, a shield, and a display of human ingenuity. For the first time, Zira felt doubt. She had mocked him, laughed at his weakness, and believed victory would be effortless. But this human was unlike any she had faced. He was not stronger in muscle, not larger in size, but he was clever, adaptive, and unyielding. And that made him dangerous. You are more than I expected," she said, her voice tinged with respect. How can one human control the storm?" Elias lowered the artifact slightly, the storm still swirling around him like a living creature. "It is not control by strength," he said. "It is control by focus, courage, and understanding. Strength alone is not enough to survive this world. Intelligence and determination are just as powerful." Zira's pride would not allow her to admit it easily, but even she could feel the truth in his words. This human had taken what should have been a death sentence, the storm, and turned it into an advantage. The mockery, the laughter, the assumption of weakness, all of it had been shattered in the face of his ingenuity. The storm reached its peak, lightning arcing across the sky in brilliant flashes, illuminating the city below. Elias stood at the center, calm and unshaken, the artifact glowing brightly in his hands. The wind twisted around him, sand and debris spinning in controlled spirals. Even Zira, with all her skill and power, had to respect the human's ability to adapt and act. "Enough," she said at last, stepping back fully. Her voice carried both caution and curiosity. "You survive, and you do so with power I did not expect. Perhaps I misjudged you." Elias nodded, lowering the artifact completely. The storm slowly calmed, responding to his release of focus. The wind still blew and the clouds roared overhead, but the immediate chaos subsided. The alien crowd below stared in awe, their whispers filled with disbelief and newfound respect. "You have shown courage," Zira said quietly, her tone different now. "And skill. Humans. Perhaps they are not as weak as I believed." Elias smiled faintly, wiping sweat and rain from his brow. "We are not weak," he said simply. "We endure, we adapt, and we rise when others expect us to fall." Zira studied him silently, her earlier mockery gone, replaced by a complex mixture of respect, curiosity, and wariness. This human had turned what should have been defeat into triumph, and for the first time she wondered, what else could he accomplish? The storm had become more than a test. It had become a revelation, Humans, fragile in appearance, clever in mind, and strong in spirit, could achieve what others deemed impossible, and Captain Elias had just proved it. "Do not think this is the end," Syra said, finally stepping back. "The storm, the challenges, they are only the beginning. But you have survived today, human. That is something no one expected." Elias adjusted his cloak and took a deep breath. The storm may have calmed for now, but the encounter was far from over. Zira was still a formidable opponent, and this planet held dangers far beyond what he had seen. But for the first time, he felt the quiet surge of confidence that comes from proving oneself against impossible odds. The alien crowd continued to watch, their whispers turning into a hum of admiration. Humans were no longer just fragile creatures from a distant star. They were beings of courage, intelligence, and unexpected power, and Captain Elias had just become the proof. As lightning flashed one final time across the sky, Elias turned and moved forward, deeper into the alien city. He had survived the storm, earned respect, and revealed a fraction of human potential, but the real challenges were yet to come. And somewhere in the shadows, Zira watched, plotting, observing, and perhaps, just perhaps, learning from the human who had summoned the storm. The night on Rixus 7 was alive with energy, the storm fading but leaving an impression of awe, and at the center of it all stood a human, small in stature but immense in courage, ready to face whatever came next. The storm had receded, but the energy it left behind hummed through the jagged cliffs and alien spires of Rixus 7. Captain Elias moved carefully, his eyes scanning every shadow, every flicker of movement. The artifact he carried was now quiet, its glow faint, but the sense of power it had released lingered in the air. He had surprised Zira, the alien warrior, but he knew the battle was far from over. Zira appeared from above, descending like a shadow against the storm-darkened sky. Her armor shimmered in the dim light, and her eyes were fixed on Elias with sharp focus. She had recovered from her initial shock and was now studying him carefully. He had shown courage, skill, and a capacity to adapt, but she was still a formidable warrior. Elias knew he could not rely solely on the storm's display. He needed strategy, speed, and precision. "You survived," Zira said, her voice carrying over the wind-swept cliffs. "But survival is only the first step. Can you endure my full strength, human?" "I will endure," Elias replied steadily. "I will adapt, and I will fight if I must." Zira's lips curved into a smile that was part challenge and part curiosity. She stepped closer, her movements controlled and deliberate. The ground beneath them trembled faintly as she readied herself, each step echoing with energy. The first attack came fast. Zira lunged, her speed almost too quick for the human eye. Elias dodged instinctively, rolling to the side as her energy blade struck the ground where he had stood moments before. Sparks flew and the stone beneath them cracked from the impact. He scrambled to his feet, keeping his focus sharp. Each move needed to be precise. One mistake could be fatal. Zira circled him, her eyes glinting with anticipation. "Impressive," she said. "But you will tire. Your movements are clever, but your body is fragile. How long can you last against me?" Elias did not respond with words. Instead, he assessed, calculated, and moved. He used the terrain to his advantage, ducking behind jagged rocks, leaping over crevices and rolling under sudden attacks. Each action was deliberate. Zira's brute strength gave her speed and power, but her movements, though precise, were predictable. Humans, Elias knew, could outthink even the strongest opponent. The wind picked up again, though the storm had passed. It swirled around them like a living entity, carrying sand, energy, and debris. Elias saw an opportunity. He leapt onto a jagged rock, using its height to gain a better vantage point. Zira followed, attacking with a sudden strike that he barely dodged. Rocks shattered under her power, sending fragments spinning dangerously close. Elias's heart raced, but his mind remained calm. He had learned quickly. Survival was not just about strength, but about observation. Every gesture, every flicker of movement from Zira gave him information. He adapted, using small diversions to test her reactions, baiting her into overextending. The more she struck, the more opportunities he found to evade and reposition. "You are clever," Zira said aloud, frustration creeping into her tone. "I expected an easy victory. But you think, you anticipate, and that is unusual for a human." "I learned from observation," Elias replied, keeping his focus sharp. "Courage without thought is weakness. Thought without courage is useless. Together, they are strength." Zyra's next strike was a test of her full power. She slammed the ground with her energy blade, creating a shockwave that sent Elias flying backward. He landed hard, his boots skidding on the sand, but he did not give in. He pushed himself up, ignoring the bruises forming on his arms and legs. Humans endured pain. Humans adapted. Humans survived. And Elias intended to show her all three. The battle became a dance of strategy and agility. Zyra attacked with raw force, each strike precise and powerful. Elias moved with calculated speed, using the environment to shield himself, leveraging debris as obstacles, and guiding her attacks into the jagged terrain. Rocks fell around them, sparks flew from clashing energy, and the wind carried the hum of tension. "You are resilient," Zyra admitted, stepping back for a moment. She studied him, trying to anticipate his next move. But strength alone is not what wins battles. You must act decisively, or this will end in your defeat. Elias nodded internally. He had one more strategy left. The artifact, though quiet, still held untapped energy. He had learned that Zyra's confidence could be a weakness. Her overestimation of her own skill and underestimation of human ingenuity created openings. One clever move, one perfect moment could change the tide entirely. He feigned exhaustion, slowing his movements, letting Zyra believe she had worn him down. She lunged, expecting an easy strike, but Elias anticipated the trajectory. He rolled under her attack, grabbing a fragment of stone, and used it to propel himself upward. Zyra's eyes widened as Elias landed with perfect balance on a cliff edge. He raised his arm slightly, the faint glow of the artifact visible beneath his cloak. "Humans survive," he said, voice steady despite the effort. "Because we adapt, we endure, and we rise when others expect us to fall." The artifact pulsed softly, sensing his focus. Zyra moved to attack again, but the energy around Elias seemed to respond, forming a subtle barrier that diverted debris and wind. Lightning arced nearby, striking the cliffs, and the echoes of the storm seemed to answer Elias's silent command. "You," Zyra began, stepping back, her tone sharp and cautious. "How can one human—" "Through courage," Elias said simply. "Through observation. Through focus. Through will." The alien crowd below gasped. Humans were known to endure, to survive against odds, but what they were witnessing was more than endurance. It was intelligence applied under pressure, courage under chaos, and the ability to turn danger into opportunity. Elias used the storm's residual energy to his advantage, moving with precision and adapting instantly to Zyra's attacks. He led her into areas where falling debris and unstable ground slowed her movements. He used her own momentum against her, redirecting her strikes into harmless spaces. The tide of the battle shifted subtly but unmistakably. Zyra, though still powerful, began to show signs of hesitation. She had expected to dominate with raw strength, but Elias's intelligence and adaptability created openings she had not accounted for. "You are clever," she admitted, voice edged with respect. "I misjudged you. Most humans would have been crushed by the storm, or overpowered by my strength. Yet here you are, standing unbroken, adapting to every strike." Elias allowed a faint smile. "Strength alone does not win battles. Intelligence, courage, and the will to survive are just as important." Zyra paused, studying him silently. She could feel that the human's mind was a weapon, perhaps even more dangerous than his body, and she realized that underestimating humans had been her greatest mistake. You are more than I expected," she said finally. "Perhaps humans are not as weak as I believed." Elias nodded, keeping his focus. "We are never weak when we refuse to give up. Strength comes in many forms, not just muscle or weapons." The alien crowd watched in awe. Humans were no longer the fragile species they had assumed. They were clever, courageous, and resilient. And Captain Elias had proven it through every calculated step, every dodge, and every act of strategy. Zyra took a step back, her energy blade lowering slightly. She had learned something important. Humans could endure, adapt, and outthink even the strongest opponents. And that realization was both unsettling and intriguing. Elias, breathing steadily despite the exhaustion, took a moment to assess the battlefield. Rocks were scattered, debris spun in small vortices, and the wind still carried the echoes of the storm. He had survived, he had adapted, and he had proven that courage and intelligence could rival even the greatest strength. "You have done well," Zyra said at last, her tone softer but firm. "You survived because you were clever, focused, and brave. Few could match you." "I survive," Elias replied quietly. Because humans endure, adapt, and rise to meet any challenge. The wind continued to howl around them, but the battle had shifted. Elias had proven that strength alone did not determine the outcome. The balance of power had changed, and the aliens, including Zyra, could see it clearly. The night was alive with tension, energy, and the hum of respect earned through action. And at the center of it all stood a human, small in form but immense in courage and intelligence, ready for whatever came next. The wind still whispered across the jagged cliffs of Rix's 7, carrying the faint hum of energy that lingered after the storm. Captain Elias stood tall, the artifact in his hand pulsing softly with restrained power. Every muscle in his body was tense, ready for what was coming next. He had survived the storm, outmaneuvered Zyra, and proven the strength of human ingenuity and courage. But he knew the challenge was not yet over. Zyra emerged from the shadows, her armor glinting even in the dim light of the storm's aftermath. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, studied Elias carefully. There was no mockery in her gaze now, only respect tempered with caution. The alien warrior who had laughed at his weakness now faced a human who had turned nature itself into an ally. "You have done well, human," she said, her voice steady, yet carrying a weight of awe. "You survive where others would have fallen. But do you truly understand what you have done?" Elias tightened his grip on the artifact. "I understand that humans endure, that courage and intelligence can overcome strength and power, and that even when others doubt us, we rise to meet the challenge." Zyra's lips curved into a small, reluctant smile. "Perhaps you are right. Humans are not weak. You have shown me something I never expected. That strength alone does not determine the victor." The alien crowd below murmured in astonishment. Whispers of respect and disbelief spread quickly. Humans had often been underestimated, seen as fragile and limited. But this human, Captain Elias, had turned every expectation upside down. He had survived the storm, outwitted a powerful alien warrior, and demonstrated a courage that inspired awe. Elias did not lower his guard. He knew Zyra was still a formidable opponent. Her strength had not diminished. She was still fast, precise, and deadly, but now he had gained the upper hand, not through brute force but through strategy, focus, and the careful use of the artifact. Zyra raised her hands, summoning a controlled burst of energy. Lightning arced from her armor, crackling in the air with raw power. Elias could feel the intensity, the weight of her attack, and the anticipation of the crowd. Every alien watching knew this would be the decisive moment, the final test of human ingenuity against alien strength. Elias raised the artifact, feeling the subtle hum of energy within it respond to his focus. He did not attack immediately. Instead, he observed, analyzed, and calculated. Zyra's strikes were precise, but they followed patterns. Each movement, each gesture could be anticipated with careful attention. Humans, he knew, could turn observation into power. The first strike came fast. Zyra unleashed a surge of energy that would have crushed most opponents instantly. Elias ducked and rolled, using a shard of stone as cover. Sparks flew and the ground cracked beneath the impact. But he had learned to adapt, and each movement was calculated to avoid harm while creating opportunities. "You are clever," Zyra admitted aloud, frustration laced with admiration. "You anticipate, you adapt. But can you endure the full power?" Elias tightened his focus. "Strength without thought is wasted. Power without courage is meaningless. Watch, and you will see what humans are capable of." With a deep breath, he activated the artifact fully. Its glow intensified, radiating energy that pulsed like the heartbeat of the storm itself. Lightning from the clouds above seemed to respond, striking the cliffs and sand in controlled bursts that followed Elias's intent. The storm, once wild and unpredictable, now danced to his command. Zyra's eyes widened. She moved swiftly, attempting to disrupt his control, but the artifact responded to his focus and will. Sand and debris formed a protective vortex around him, deflecting attacks and creating openings. Every strike she made was countered not by brute strength but by strategy, positioning, and intelligence. You control the storm," Zyra exclaimed, stepping back in disbelief. "No human, no being, should be able to do this." Elias's voice was calm, steady, and confident. "Control does not come from size or strength. It comes from focus, courage, and understanding. Humans endure, adapt, and rise to meet challenges others cannot." The alien crowd gasped. Some had expected the human to be crushed long ago, Yet here he was, mastering forces that had seemed untouchable. Zyra's laughter, once mocking, was gone. Even she, a warrior who had never met an equal, could not deny the human's skill and courage. With careful precision, Elias guided the storm's energy to create barriers, openings, and controlled strikes. Rocks moved, wind shifted, and lightning arced in patterns that both protected him and exposed vulnerabilities in Zyra's approach. Every move was a lesson in strategy and adaptation. Zyra attacked again, faster and with greater energy, but Elias had anticipated her patterns. He dodged, rolled, and redirected her momentum, turning her strength against the environment itself. Rocks fell around her, sand whipped in her eyes, and the wind shifted unpredictably. The human's cleverness forced her to react, to adapt, and to acknowledge that this opponent was unlike any she had faced before. "You are more than I expected," she admitted, stepping back. "I underestimated you. Humans. Perhaps you are not as weak as I believed." Elias lowered the artifact slightly, keeping it ready, his focus unwavering. "We are never weak when we refuse to give up. Strength is not only measured by muscle or weapons. Intelligence, courage, and determination are power as well." Zyra's expression softened. She no longer saw him as a fragile opponent, but as a warrior in his own right. The storm's energy swirled around Elias, controlled not by force alone, but by the clever mind and steady spirit of a human. She realized that the lesson she had intended to teach him, that humans were weak, had backfired. Instead, she had witnessed the emergence of a being capable of surpassing expectations through resilience and ingenuity. The storm's final crescendo came when Elias fully embraced the artifact's energy. Lightning struck in precise patterns. Wind and debris moved in harmony with his intent, and the alien landscape itself seemed to respond to his will. Zyra paused, realizing that this was no ordinary human feat. This was a display of intelligence, courage, and adaptability that even she could not match. "You have proven yourself," she said quietly, lowering her weapon. Her armor glowed softly, reflecting both respect and astonishment. "Humans, perhaps I misjudged you. You are clever, brave, and strong in ways I did not expect." Elias nodded, keeping his focus sharp. "Strength comes in many forms. Courage, intelligence, and the will to endure are as powerful as muscle or energy. Humans survive, adapt, and rise even when others doubt us." The alien crowd erupted in astonishment. Whispers of admiration spread quickly through the city. Humans had often been underestimated, dismissed as weak and overlooked. But Captain Elias had changed their perception in a single display of courage and ingenuity. Zyra stepped closer, not with aggression, but with respect. "You have earned it," she said. "The respect of your people and mine. Few could survive, let alone command the storm itself." Elias allowed a small, humble smile. "I only did what humans have always done. Endure, adapt, and rise." The storm finally settled, leaving the alien city in an eerie calm. The energy in the air faded, but the impression remained. Captain Elias had survived, adapted, and triumphed, showing that even the smallest human could face impossible odds and prevail. "You are extraordinary," Zyra said, her tone quieter now, almost reflective. "I will not forget this day, human. You have shown me that courage and intelligence can surpass strength. Humans are more than I ever imagined." Elias lowered the artifact completely, breathing steadily. He had proven more than survival. He had proven the strength of human spirit. Even against superior strength and overwhelming odds, humans could endure, adapt, and triumph. The alien crowd below cheered, their awe and respect evident. Whispers turned into recognition. Humans were no longer fragile, weak, or insignificant. They were beings of courage, ingenuity, and heart, and Captain Elias had become the symbol of that truth. Zyra extended a hand, not in challenge, but in acknowledgement. "You have earned my respect," she said. "Humans are formidable not just because of strength, but because of heart, mind, and courage." Elias took her hand firmly. "And we respect those who challenge us fairly," he replied. "Strength alone is never enough. Courage, intelligence, and adaptability define true power." The wind stirred gently around them, carrying the sense of triumph. The storm had been conquered, the challenge met, and the human spirit celebrated. Captain Elias had faced the impossible, and he had risen. As he turned to leave the alien city, Zyra watched him go, a new understanding in her eyes. This small, unassuming human had shown her that power was not only measured by strength, but by heart, courage, and determination. The stars above Rixus 7 shimmered faintly through the clouds as if acknowledging the victory. And at the center of it all, Captain Elias walked forward, a human who had not only survived but had inspired respect, admiration, and a new understanding of what humanity could achieve. In the end, the lesson was clear. Even in a world of storms, alien warriors and impossible odds, humans endure, humans adapt, humans rise, and through courage, intelligence, and unwavering spirit, they can overcome challenges that seem insurmountable. The night was quiet now. The storm faded, but the story of human triumph on Rixus 7 would be remembered by all who witnessed it. And somewhere beyond the horizon, new challenges awaited. But Captain Elias was ready. Humans always were.